"Save me," begged the Apache girl hanging from the tree. The cowboy saved her. For a price asterisk, Part 1. The sun was dropping low, turning the desert sky into soft orange and dusty gold. A lone cowboy rode along a dry creek bed, following a path only he used. His name was Daniel Cole, and most people in town said he was the kind of man who belonged more to the land than to crowds. Daniel did not talk much. He did not laugh much either. He worked his ranch, fixed what broke, and kept his distance from other folks. Years ago, he had lost something important, something that made his world feel smaller. Since then, he had learned how to live with silence. That evening, he was bringing home a tired horse and a small cart of supplies. The road from town had been quiet, but the desert never truly felt empty to him. It had a way of watching. As he neared the outer fence line of his ranch, Daniel noticed a shape ahead near an old mesquite tree. The tree stood alone, its branches twisted like it had fought 1,000 storms. At first, Daniel thought it was a torn blanket caught in the branches, moving slightly in the wind. Then the shape moved again, slowly, weakly, and Daniel's stomach tightened. He urged his horse forward, careful but fast. When he got close enough, he saw what it really was. A girl, young, dust-covered, and barely holding on. A rope had been tied to a branch above her, and her feet were just brushing the ground as if she had been left there on purpose to suffer. Her face was pale from heat and fear, but her eyes were alive, sharp, stubborn, and pleading. "Save me," she whispered, the words breaking like dry leaves. Daniel's hand moved before his mind could argue with it. He jumped off his horse, rushed under the tree, and pulled out his knife. He didn't stop to think about who she was or why she was there. He only thought one thing: she was alive, and she didn't deserve to be left like this. He cut the rope cleanly. The girl dropped into his arms, lighter than he expected, like her strength had been stolen by the desert itself. Daniel lowered her carefully to the ground and checked her breathing. It was weak but steady. She tried to speak again, but her lips trembled, her eyes rolled upward, and her body went still. Daniel exhaled through his nose and looked around. No riders, no voices, no movement. But the desert could hide many things. He picked her up and carried her toward his cabin. The walk wasn't far, but her weight made his arms burn. Still, he didn't stop. He pushed through the door and laid her on his bed. His cabin was simple: wood, stone, and the smell of leather and coffee. It wasn't built to welcome visitors. It was built to keep one man alive. Daniel poured water into a cup and dipped a cloth into it. He cleaned the dust from her cheeks, then checked her wrists. That was when he noticed something strange. Under the dirt and torn sleeve, there was a thin metal band around her forearm. It did not look like any jewelry he had seen. It wasn't silver or iron, and it had no normal clasp. It fit her skin too perfectly, like it had been made for her alone. And even stranger, there were faint lines on it, almost like tiny engraved symbols. They were not letters he recognized. Daniel stared at it for a long moment. He had seen something similar once before. Years ago, on a night when the stars seemed too bright, he had watched strange lights move across the sky. Not like shooting stars, not like lanterns. They moved with purpose, like something searching. He had told no one. People would have laughed, or worse, they would have come looking for answers he didn't have. Daniel touched the metal band gently with his fingertip. It felt warm, not hot, just alive. The girl stirred, and Daniel pulled his hand back quickly. He sat on a chair near the bed and waited. Minutes passed. Then her eyes opened. She didn't wake slowly like most people. She woke like someone who expected danger the moment she opened her eyes. Her gaze snapped to him. Daniel stayed still, hands open, showing he had no weapon in them. "You're safe," he said, keeping his voice calm and low. "You're in my cabin." Her eyes narrowed. She tried to sit up but winced. She looked down at her arms and legs as if checking if she was real. Then she looked at him again, and her voice came out rough. "Why?" Daniel didn't pretend he didn't understand. "Why did I cut you down?" "Yes." Daniel leaned back slightly. "Because you were alive." That answer didn't satisfy her. Nothing in her face relaxed. "Who did that?" Daniel asked. The girl hesitated. Her jaw tightened. She looked toward the window, watching the fading light outside as if she expected riders to appear any second. "I can't say," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "If someone left you out there, they might come back. If they come here, I need to know what I'm dealing with." She pressed her lips together. Daniel waited. He had learned that pushing people too hard only made them lie faster. Finally, she spoke, choosing her words carefully. "Men from outside, not my people." "Outlaws?" Daniel asked. Her eyes flickered. "Worse than outlaws, they don't just want money. Daniel's gaze dropped to the metal band on her arm. They want that. The girl's shoulders stiffened like a blade had touched her spine. You saw it. I couldn't miss it. Her hand moved as if to cover it, but she stopped when pain hit her again. She swallowed. Daniel stood and moved to the shelf where he kept supplies. He pulled down a small tin of salve and a roll of cloth. I'm going to wrap your arm and clean the cuts, he said. If you don't want help, say it now. She watched him closely. You'll take it from me. Daniel paused and met her eyes. If I wanted it, I wouldn't be asking. She didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. He cleaned her injuries slowly. He didn't rush. He didn't treat her like she was broken, only like she was hurt. When he finished, he wrapped the cloth and stepped back. The girl took a careful breath. My name is Tala, Daniel nodded once. Daniel. She repeated it like she was tasting the sound. Daniel. The way she said it was not friendly. It was cautious, like she was placing his name on a scale to see how heavy it was. Daniel poured more water into a cup and handed it to her. Drink. She took it, but she didn't drink right away. She looked at the water like it could be poisoned. Daniel didn't take offense. It's clean. She finally sipped slowly. As she drank, Daniel leaned against the table, still keeping a safe distance. How long were you out there? Tala's eyes darkened. Long enough. That told him what he needed. Her throat was dry. Her skin had the look of someone who had been under the sun with no shade, no mercy. Daniel's voice softened without him meaning it to. You have family? Tala's gaze shifted away. Not here. Friends, a pause, not anymore. Daniel didn't ask further. Sometimes the truth hurt too much to drag into the open. Outside, the wind picked up. The cabin walls creaked softly. Tala stiffened again and sat up a little, listening. They'll come. Daniel didn't doubt her. Maybe, maybe not. They will, she said firmly. They don't quit. Daniel walked to the window and looked out. Nothing moved, no dust trails, no riders, but the desert was wide, and wide things could hide danger for a long time. He turned back. If they come, I can handle them. Tala's eyes narrowed. Alone? Daniel shrugged. I've been alone a long time. That was the wrong thing to say. Tala's expression changed, not softer, but sharper in a different way, like she had found a crack in his armor. You saved me, she said, but you want something. Daniel blinked. What? Tala held his gaze. Nothing is free. Men don't risk trouble for nothing. Daniel let out a slow breath. She wasn't wrong. The world had taught her that. He thought for a moment, then spoke plainly. I won't lie. Trouble costs time. Time costs money. And I don't have much to spare. Tala's grip tightened on the cup. Daniel continued. If you stay here, you'll have a roof, food, water, safety as long as I can give it. And the price? She asked. Daniel nodded toward the door, toward the ranch outside. Work. You help on the ranch until you're strong enough to leave. No stealing. No secrets that bring death to my doorstep. Tala's eyes flashed at that last word, but Daniel wasn't trying to threaten her. He was trying to be clear. Tala looked down at the metal band on her arm. For a moment, her face showed something small and human, fear mixed with determination. Then she looked back up. I can work, Daniel nodded. Good, Tala's voice dropped. But if they come, if they find me here, they will try to make you pay. Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked to the wall and took down his rifle, not to point it at her, but to check it, to make sure it was ready. Then he placed it back carefully. He looked at Tala again. I already chose when I cut that rope. Tala stared at him, as if she couldn't understand a man making a choice like that. Outside, the sun vanished fully behind the hills, and night began to crawl over the desert. Daniel lit a lamp and set it on the table. The warm glow filled the cabin, pushing back the darkness. Tala watched the flame. Her eyes looked tired, but her mind stayed awake. Somewhere far beyond the ranch, a coyote howled. Daniel felt the weight of the day settle into his bones, but he also felt something else. Like the desert had shifted, and the quiet life he built was about to break open. He didn't know who Tala truly was. He didn't know what the metal band meant. And he didn't know what kind of men would hang a girl from a tree and walk away like it was nothing. But he knew this. The desert had delivered her to his doorstep, and whatever was coming next, it was coming fast. Morning came slowly over the desert, bringing soft light through the small cabin window. Daniel was already awake before the sun rose. He sat at the wooden table with a cup of black coffee, watching the sky change colors. The quiet felt different now. For years, silence had been simple and empty. Today it felt heavier, like something unseen was moving closer. Behind him, Tala stirred on the bed. She woke carefully, not like someone who trusted mornings. Her eyes opened slowly, scanning the room, the door, the window, and finally stopping on Daniel. He nodded once. "Morning." She didn't answer right away. She sat up slowly, testing her strength. Her movements were careful but controlled. The weakness from yesterday was still there, but she hid it well. "You sleep?" Daniel asked. "A little," she replied. "That's good enough." He stood and placed a small plate of food on the table, bread, dried meat, and water. Tala hesitated before coming closer. She still watched him like he might change at any moment. "You said I work," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Not today. Today you don't fall over." A small flash of surprise crossed her face, but she said nothing. She began to eat slowly, as if measuring every bite. Outside, the ranch looked calm. The wind moved across the fields, brushing over dry grass. Horses shifted in the corral, and the wooden fence creaked softly. Daniel stepped outside to check the area. He walked around the cabin slowly, studying the ground. His eyes were trained to notice changes, broken branches, fresh footprints, disturbed dirt. For now, there was nothing. Still, the feeling stayed. He returned inside and found Tala standing near the window, watching the horizon. "You expect them soon," he said. "Yes." "How many?" She hesitated. "Enough." Daniel nodded slowly. That answer told him everything. She didn't know exact numbers, but she knew they were serious. He leaned against the wall. "You said they want the band." Tala's hand moved instinctively toward her arm. "Yes." "What does it do?" Silence filled the room. Daniel didn't push immediately. He waited. Finally, she spoke. "It's a key." "To what?" She shook her head. "I don't know everything, only what I was told." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "My people protect something old," she continued slowly. "Something not made by us, not made by anyone from this land." Daniel felt a small chill despite the warm morning. "Not made by people," he repeated. Tala nodded. "Visitors came long ago. They left things behind. My ancestors became guardians." Daniel thought about the strange lights he had seen years ago. The memory returned clearly, silent shapes crossing the sky like they were searching. "And those men?" he asked. "They believe the key leads to power," Tala said. "Weapons, energy. Something they can sell." Daniel frowned. "And does it?" "No," she said firmly. "It protects, it heals, that is its purpose." He studied her face. She was not lying. Before he could ask more, one of the horses outside made a sudden sharp sound. Daniel's body reacted instantly. He grabbed his hat and stepped outside again. Dust moved far away on the horizon, not close, not yet, but enough to make him tense. He returned inside. "Someone's out there, too far to see who." Tala's eyes darkened. "It begins." Daniel grabbed his rifle and checked it calmly. "Then we prepare." The rest of the morning passed with quiet movement. Tala insisted on helping despite her injuries. She followed Daniel as he showed her where tools were kept and how to secure shutters. He noticed something as she worked, she learned quickly. She watched his hands and copied movements with surprising skill. "You worked ranch before?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I watch." He nodded slightly. Watching was often more powerful than talking. By afternoon, the heat rose high. They worked in silence until Tala paused suddenly. She stared at the sky. Daniel followed her gaze. For a brief moment, something flashed high above, not like sunlight on a bird, not like a cloud. A small, bright shape moved fast, then vanished. Tala's breathing changed. "They are searching." Daniel lowered his eyes slowly. "You mean from above?" She nodded. Daniel felt a strange mix of doubt and acceptance. He didn't fully understand, but the desert had taught him that not everything needed understanding to be real. As evening approached, tension grew heavier. Daniel prepared extra water and moved supplies closer to the cabin. Tala watched him quietly. "You don't ask for more details," Daniel shrugged. "If you want to tell me, you will." She studied him carefully. "Most men would demand answers." "Most men don't live out here," he replied simply. That answer made her pause. Later, they sat outside as the sun began to set. The sky turned deep red, painting the land in long shadows. Tala broke the silence. "You said nothing is free." Daniel nodded. "You asked for work, that is fair," she said, "but you did not ask for the band." Daniel looked at her directly. "It's yours. You could sell it." "Maybe," he said, "but I wouldn't sleep well." She watched him for a long moment as if trying to understand something deeper. Suddenly, the wind shifted. Daniel's eyes narrowed, hoofbeats, faint at first, then clearer, riders. He stood immediately. Tala rose beside him, her body tense. Dust appeared in the distance, 3 figures riding slowly toward the ranch. "They found me," Tala whispered. Daniel didn't respond with fear. He simply moved. He guided Tala inside and closed the door quietly. "Stay behind me," he said. The riders approached slowly, stopping near the fence. 3 men, hard faces, watching carefully. One called out, "Evening, cowboy." Daniel stepped outside, keeping his posture calm. "Evening. We're looking for someone," the man said. "Young girl, dangerous. Stole something from us." Daniel leaned slightly against the porch post. "Haven't seen anyone." The men exchanged glances. Their leader smiled without warmth. "You sure we saw tracks coming this way?" Daniel shrugged. "Lots of tracks out here." The man's eyes shifted toward the cabin door. "Mind if we look around?" Daniel's voice stayed calm. "I do mind." Silence filled the air. The horses shifted nervously. Finally, the leader laughed softly. "No need to get tense. We're just asking." Daniel didn't smile. After a long pause, the riders turned their horses slowly. "Think about it," the leader said before leaving. "People who hide trouble usually regret it." They rode away, disappearing into the dust. Daniel waited until they were completely gone before lowering his shoulders. He stepped inside. Tala stood frozen near the wall. "They will come back," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Probably." She looked at him, guilt filling her eyes. "You should let me go. I don't want your home destroyed because of me." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You couldn't walk straight yesterday. You're not going anywhere." "They will hurt you." Daniel's expression didn't change. "They can try." Tala stared at him, confusion and respect mixing together. For the first time, her voice softened. "Why?" Daniel hesitated. Because no one had saved him when he needed it. Because he knew what it meant to be left alone. Because something inside him refused to turn away. But he didn't say all that. Instead, he answered simply, "Because I chose." Outside, night settled over the desert again. Inside the cabin, 2 people sat in silence, both knowing that whatever came next would change everything. Night wrapped around the desert like a quiet warning. The wind moved across the open land, carrying dust and distant sounds that only careful ears could hear. Inside the cabin, a small lamp burned softly, casting long shadows on the wooden walls. Daniel sat near the window, watching the darkness outside. He had not slept much since the riders came earlier. His body remained calm, but his instincts stayed awake. Tala sat across from him, her hands resting on her knees. She looked stronger than before, but tension still lived in her eyes. "They were only scouts," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "That's what I thought. They will bring more next time. Then we'll be ready." Tala studied him carefully. "You say that like you are not afraid." Daniel leaned back slightly. "Fear doesn't help planning." She didn't argue. Instead, she took a slow breath. "There is something I must tell you," she said. Daniel waited. "The band, it is not only a key," she continued. "It responds to danger. It guides the wearer toward what it protects." Daniel's gaze shifted toward the faint metal band on her arm. Even in the dim light, it gave off a soft glow. "And where does it guide you?" he asked. Tala hesitated. "Not far from here." Daniel raised an eyebrow. She nodded slowly. "The sanctuary, it is hidden somewhere in this desert." He felt a strange chill. "Sanctuary?" "Yes, a place left behind by visitors from the stars. My ancestors were chosen to guard its secret." Daniel crossed his arms. "And those men believe it holds power." "They believe it holds weapons," she corrected. "But they are wrong." "What does it hold then?" Tala's voice softened. "Knowledge, healing, protection." Daniel looked out the window again. He had always believed the desert held mysteries older than people understood. Now it felt like those mysteries were stepping closer to him. "If they find it first," he asked. "They will try to use it," Tala said, "and they will destroy what they do not understand." Silence settled between them. Finally, Daniel stood up. "Then we don't let them find it." Tala blinked, surprised by how quickly he made the decision. "You would help me reach it?" she asked. "You said it's nearby," he replied. "Better to move before they return with more men." She watched him carefully. "You trust me?" Daniel paused. That question felt heavier than the others. "I trust what I see," he said, "and I see someone trying to protect something important." Tala lowered her gaze slightly. For the first time, her shoulders relaxed a little. They began preparing immediately. Daniel packed water, food, and tools into saddlebags. He checked his rifle but handled it with calm purpose rather than aggression. Tala moved around the cabin quietly, gathering only what she needed. She touched nothing else, as if respecting that the space belonged to him. Before dawn, they stepped outside. The sky was dark blue, filled with fading stars. The air felt cool, but tension hung beneath it. Daniel saddled 2 horses. Tala climbed onto one with steady movement, though he noticed she still favored one side slightly. "You sure you're ready?" he asked. Yes, he nodded once. They rode toward the open desert, leaving the ranch behind. The land stretched endlessly around them. Sand, rock, and distant hills painted a quiet world that looked empty but felt alive. For hours, they rode in silence. Tala watched the horizon while occasionally glancing at the band on her arm. Sometimes it gave a faint pulse of light, guiding her direction. "You've done this before?" Daniel asked. She shook her head. "No, the band responds differently each time." "That sounds helpful," he said dryly. She gave the smallest hint of a smile. As the sun climbed higher, they reached a narrow canyon. Tall rock walls rose on both sides, creating long shadows. Tala slowed her horse. "This way." Daniel followed. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Even the wind seemed to stay outside. Finally, Tala stopped near a large rock formation covered in old symbols carved into the stone. The markings looked ancient, but some parts glowed faintly when her band came closer. Daniel dismounted slowly. "You sure about this place?" Tala nodded. "I feel it." She stepped forward carefully. The band began to glow brighter, soft blue light spreading across the metal. The symbols on the rock responded. Lines of light appeared, forming shapes that moved like living patterns. Daniel stared. "Well, that's something." The ground trembled gently. A section of the rock wall slid open silently, revealing a hidden entrance. Cool air flowed out, carrying a faint humming sound. Tala stepped back, both amazed and nervous. "It still works." Daniel looked at her. "After you." They entered together. Inside, the air felt different, cleaner, calmer. The walls were smooth, glowing softly without fire or lamps. Strange structures stood quietly, waiting as if they had been asleep for centuries. Daniel walked slowly, eyes wide but steady. He reached out but stopped himself from touching anything. "This isn't from our world," he said. "No," Tala replied softly. "It was made to help humanity survive difficult times." They moved deeper into the sanctuary. Symbols shifted along the walls as if recognizing Tala's presence. Suddenly, a soft light surrounded her, scanning gently before fading. "It recognizes you," Daniel said. Tala nodded. "Or my ancestors." For a moment, peace filled the space. Then Daniel heard something faint. Hoofbeats, he turned quickly toward the entrance. "They followed us." Tala's eyes widened. "How?" "Tracks," he said simply. Outside, voices echoed. The hunters had arrived. Daniel moved toward the entrance carefully, positioning himself near the rock wall. Several men appeared at the canyon entrance, weapons ready. Their leader stepped forward, smiling coldly. "Well," he called out, "looks like we found something valuable." Tala stepped beside Daniel, fear and determination mixing in her expression. "You cannot take this," she said firmly. The man laughed. "Everything can be taken." He took a step closer. The band on Tala's arm began glowing brighter. The sanctuary responded. Soft energy fields appeared across the entrance, blocking the men from advancing further. They fired their weapons, but the energy absorbed the shots harmlessly. Daniel lowered his rifle slightly, surprised but relieved. The leader's smile faded. "What is this?" "Protection," Tala said quietly. The men looked uncertain now, their confidence cracked. Daniel glanced at Tala. "Seems your ancestors built something smart." She didn't smile. She watched the men carefully, knowing they wouldn't give up easily. The leader stepped closer again, frustration in his eyes. "You think a few lights will stop us?" Before he could move further, the sanctuary released a deep humming sound. The ground vibrated softly, warning them. The men hesitated. Daniel stood firm beside Tala. For the first time since this began, he felt hope, but he also knew this was not the end. The desert outside held more dangers, and men driven by greed rarely walked away quietly. Inside the sanctuary, the lights glowed brighter, preparing for whatever came next. The air inside the hidden sanctuary felt calm, but outside the entrance, tension hung heavy like a coming storm. The soft, glowing barrier stood between Tala, Daniel, and the group of hunters who had followed them through the desert. The leader of the hunters stared at the barrier with narrowed eyes. He raised his hand slowly, signaling his men to stop firing. The energy field had absorbed every shot without effort, leaving only silence behind. Daniel stood beside Tala, watching carefully. His rifle rested in his hands, but he did not raise it. He knew the sanctuary was protecting them for now, but he also understood that nothing lasted forever. "They won't leave," Tala whispered. Daniel nodded. "People chasing power don't walk away easy." Outside, the leader stepped closer again, his boots crunching against the desert stones. He looked at Tala directly. You don't understand what you're guarding, he said loudly. That place could change everything. Wealth, strength, control. Tala's voice remained steady. It is not meant for control, the man laughed. Everything is meant for control if you know how to use it. The sanctuary hummed softly as if reacting to his words. Daniel glanced at Tala. What happens if they keep pushing? She swallowed. The system will defend itself, but it was built to protect life, not destroy it. Daniel exhaled slowly. That was both comforting and worrying. The hunters began to spread out, searching for another way inside. Some tried touching the barrier with tools, others walked along the canyon walls. The leader stepped forward again, raising his voice. You can't stay inside forever. Food runs out. Water runs out. You'll come out eventually. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Maybe. Tala looked at him, confused by his calm tone. He leaned closer to her and spoke quietly. He wants us afraid. Don't give him that. She nodded. Inside the sanctuary, lights along the walls began to shift. Symbols moved slowly, forming new patterns. Tala felt warmth spreading through the band on her arm. It's reacting, she said softly. To what? Daniel asked. To me, to danger, maybe both. She stepped forward, following an instinct she didn't fully understand. The glowing symbols guided her toward a central platform deeper inside the sanctuary. Daniel followed closely, still watching the entrance from the corner of his eye. At the center of the chamber, a circular platform lit up as Tala approached. A soft beam of light rose around her, scanning gently without causing harm. Daniel watched carefully, ready to step in if anything went wrong. The light faded, and a calm voice echoed through the chamber. It spoke in a language Daniel didn't understand at first, but slowly the sounds shifted into words he could recognize. Guardian identified. Tala looked around, both amazed and emotional. The system still recognizes my people, she said quietly. The voice continued. Threat detected, defensive protocols active, harm prevention priority. Daniel nodded slightly. I like the sound of that. Outside, the hunters grew restless. One of them shouted in frustration after failing to break through the barrier. The leader turned back toward the entrance and called out again. You're hiding behind tricks. Come out and talk like adults. Daniel stepped forward so he could be seen. You've said enough. The man's smile returned slowly. You're protecting something that could make you rich, cowboy. Why stand in my way? Daniel shrugged slightly. I've never cared much about rich. The man's eyes hardened. Then you're just foolish. Daniel didn't respond. Inside, Tala felt the sanctuary responding to her emotions. Screens of light appeared around her, showing ancient images, stars, travelers, and humans standing beside beings made of light. They came to help, she whispered. They wanted humanity to grow without destroying itself. Daniel watched the images quietly. And now people like him want to use it for power. Tala nodded sadly. Suddenly, the leader gave a signal. Two of his men rolled forward a heavy object covered in cloth. Daniel's eyes narrowed. The cloth dropped, revealing a large device, something mechanical built to cut through stone or barriers. They brought equipment, Daniel said quietly. They planned this, Tala replied. The machine activated with a loud grinding sound, sending vibrations through the canyon. The sanctuary reacted instantly. The barrier brightened, strengthening against the new threat. Tala felt the band grow warm again. What do we do? She asked. Daniel thought quickly. Can the sanctuary speak to them? She hesitated. Maybe. Then try, he said. Tala stepped forward again. System communicate with outsiders, nonviolent solution. The lights flickered. The calm voice echoed outward through hidden speakers. Warning, harmful intent detected. Retreat advised. The hunters froze, startled by the sudden voice. The leader looked around angrily. Just more tricks. The machine continued working, pushing against the barrier. The sanctuary's hum deepened, stronger now. Daniel placed a hand gently on Tala's shoulder. Whatever happens, you've done everything right. She looked at him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. You could have left me, she said softly. Maybe, he replied, but I didn't want to. Outside, sparks flew as the machine struggled against the energy field. Suddenly, the sanctuary released a pulse of light. The machine stopped instantly, its power shutting down without damage. The hunters stepped back in shock. The leader cursed loudly. The calm voice spoke again. Aggressive action disabled, further hostility unnecessary. The men looked at each other uncertainly. Daniel saw doubt creeping into their expressions. Without violence, without fear, the sanctuary had removed their advantage. Finally, one of the hunters lowered his weapon. Another stepped back. The leader hesitated, anger fighting against reason. Tala stepped closer to the entrance, her voice clear and strong. "This place is not for greed. Leave now and no harm will come to you." Silence followed. The leader stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he turned away. "Pack up," he ordered quietly. The others obeyed, relief showing in their movements. Within minutes, the group rode away, disappearing back into the desert. Daniel let out a long breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The barrier softened, returning to its gentle glow. Tala turned toward him, disbelief in her eyes. "They left. For now," Daniel said, "but I think they learned something today." She smiled faintly. The sanctuary lights dimmed, returning to calm mode. Tala looked around at the ancient structures, feeling both proud and sad. "I am meant to protect this place." Daniel nodded. "But," she hesitated. "But," he asked. She looked at him carefully. "I do not want to be alone again." Daniel's expression softened. "You don't have to be," he said quietly. Outside, the sun began to rise over the canyon, filling the entrance with golden light. Together, they stepped out of the sanctuary. The desert stretched wide before them, peaceful once more. The hidden entrance slowly closed behind them, blending perfectly with the rock as if it had never been there. Tala took a deep breath. "What happens now?" Daniel adjusted his hat slightly and looked toward the direction of his ranch. "We go home," he said. She nodded, a small smile growing. The cowboy who once lived alone no longer walked the desert by himself. And the Apache girl who had been left hanging between life and death had found not only safety, but a new beginning.